Okay, this top loader is getting the NESRGB board for real. This is not going to be a test. This is for an actual customer. And as you can see, the board sits down much lower towards the motherboard. I asked him about the adapter board, and he thinks extending it to where it's not hanging over the sides would add some issues with the data lines and all that stuff. And flipping it is not an option because, for one, the power pin has a big fat trace on it, and then flipping it would put it on a thin trace, but also pins 14, 15, 16, let's see, yeah, 14 through 17 are connected to a ground plane on the bottom of the board. And if you flip that, then all of a sudden you're grounding pins, 37 or maybe something, I don't remember. Anyway, you'd be grounding pins that should not be grounded. So it's going to have to be like this. But my biggest concerns were mostly that this edge up here was going to hit the cart throat. But now that I've actually put it together and put it in there, it'd be really hard to show this on camera, but I have a good 3 millimeters between the edge of that board and the plastic of the cart slot throat. And over here where it's hanging over over the side of the motherboard, you can tell there's still quite a bit of room over there. It's not going to touch anything. So the adapter board is perfectly fine for the US top loader. So that's excellent news. This one is obviously going to get all new caps and 1.5 amp 7805. I think there was one other thing I wanted to possibly show or test. Oh, it's getting it's going to get a multi-out connector on the rear panel, and he has a double pole, double throw switch for changing between the pallets. However, he wanted it back here with the multi-out, like in the RF hole, but I just don't think there's going to be enough room once I get that shoved in there. But I'm going to have to double check that. So I'll move forward here. Okay, I'm doing a little trial fitment of the pallet switch here in the back. I have the hole cut out for the multi-out connector, and the RF hole is currently housing the on dual pole triple throw switch instead of using the very large switch supplied with the kit. I'll get it out here. Instead of using this one, which I have no idea where I would even mount that. And this one's like a double pole quad throw or something like that. It's an interesting switch, but it's very large. And this one was just a toggle switch with 3 positions. So I normally try to put that multi-out not straight out, but a little bit facing towards the center of the console, because you get SCART cords, or I should say multi-out cords with very big heads on them that don't seem to want to fit in here against the side, and then also have that hole open. Plus that toggle switch is like touching that cord now, and although I can get to it, it's not nearly as easy. So there is that issue, and I don't know where the customer got this switch. It's not something that I procured, but this is the multi-out head from a Retro Console Accessories SCART cord, and you can see that it fits in there very well, and there's still room beside or between it and the switch to get in there and mess with it. So the customer says to go ahead and go for it, mount it, and he says his heads are all small like that, so I may face this one more towards the back just to give him as much room as possible for that switch. So there's that. For as anyone that wants to do a multi-out on the back of a top loader. A rough idea of what it'll look like. I'm not totally in love with this switch though. Although I have not put any time or effort into finding something different. That's what we have so far. Okay, I think I'm pretty close to finishing up my first top loader NESRGB. I've been really busy with other stuff, so it's a little late coming, but we have a multi-out on the rear panel, and then the pallet switch mounted right next to it. I've actually been able to put this multi-out straight and flush. It looks really good, only because I know the customer has a SCART cord with a very small head on it, kind of like what Retro Console Accessory sells. I don't know where they get that or whatever, but it'll fit in there without having to move it sideways like with the original Nintendo SCART cords. There's just a huge difference there in widths. So, and the pallet switch is a double pole, double throw on switch. It is not the big switch that Tim supplies with the kit. And the difference is that this switch will will turn the board off completely and just have regular composite video coming out of the PPU. And this one will not. This just switches between the three different palettes. Normal, improved, and garnish, whatever. I like it. Okay. It seems to function properly. I don't really love how it looks right there, and even when the small-headed SCART cord is plugged in, not a ton of room there next to it. I guess it's not terrible. It's just not, to me, it's just not quite ideal yet. With the power cord right next to it, so you know, it's not the worst, but whatever. So I'm gonna finish putting it all back together here and start testing it. Okay, I've only put the heat sink back on just so I could test. There's always been a question about the 220 microfarad capacitors on the NESRGB board versus whatever SCART cord you're using. Right now I've got it hooked up with the Retro Console Accessories SCART cord, which I'm pretty sure has the 220s in the head, and it looks fine. My biggest problem with the cord right now is I can't seem to get it to make a good connection with my adapter cord for the PVM. I don't know why it's doing that. See, I still don't have green. There it is. I can't get it to stay though. I hate to blame either cord. Matter of fact, I think they're both made by Retro Console Accessories. Okay, that's what it's supposed to look like anyway. Come on. There we go. All there, and all colors look perfect, so I'm really unsure that the 220s need removed and bypassed on here. see, I've also got a normal composite Nintendo SCART cord that I can't fit in there with that switch, and having that multi-out facing straight, it's just not going to go in there. Got my old shitty SCART cord, which I do not remember. Yes, it does have the caps on the RGB lines. And for whatever reason, always seems to make good contact with the female port on the adapter cord to the PWM. You know what? It does look different. I don't know why though. And I do, yes, I am also taking composite sync and composite video back to the multi-out, and I couldn't tell you for sure which signal this cord uses. I also have an S-video cord, which just fits in there. And my 19 inch is set up for S-video. Seems like a little bit of ghosting. And that looks perfect. That pretty much looks perfect. To be honest, I'd have a hard time distinguishing between that and component. I mean, that looks really, really good. Other than that, that start screen, maybe it's supposed to look like that? I don't know. I don't remember. Close up for you here. You see there's a little bit of a shadow on each number and letter. Could be that it's supposed to look like that. I don't know for certain. Okay, one last thing that I wanted to show before I put the top shell on is I actually did break up the hot glue, and I formed a couple pillars of hot glue, because I think if you pushed any weight on that, it would actually separate in the socket over here, which could happen in shipping. It's just a problem for me, so if you're making this at home, not going to be a problem for you. Don't worry about it unless you're just paranoid. And those aren't as easy to make as they look. I try to get squeeze out a bunch right before it gets hot and flowing good, so it tends to thicken up faster. And what I'll do is I'll lay it flat like this and squeeze a bunch down there, and then flip the whole thing over and let it sit for a couple minutes, and then it'll slowly ooze its way down to whatever board I'm trying to keep up, and then it'll solidify and make a perfect pillar like that. The good thing is they're real easy to come off. I do this with my RGB boards all the time, but usually I can pick it up from the socket end, and the socket end will separate real easy, and then it'll kind of put a lever on that part where it's sticky to the board and come right off clean, and the pillar will still stay down there, and it'll still be reusable afterwards, because it doesn't really matter if it's sticking to it, just as long as it will take any kind of downward force. So now I just need to drill a hole for the LED on the shell and then put it back on there, and maybe I'll turn it back on and let it run for a while again. Okay, I've been letting it go for quite a while, and I did want to show there is a difference between which AC adapter you use. This is an original one, and this is the cheap Chinese one that I usually sell with all my composite mounted top loaders. And right now, using the original NES AC adapter, there's like absolutely zero interference. And if I switch to the Chinese one, you kind of see some scrolling bands of interference. And the only reason for that is the power supply. The switching converter or switching power supply adds interference to it. It's not terrible, but it's there. Okay, so I think I'm pretty well done with the first one here. I had a little problem with the switch. I think there's a diagram that maybe even Draken posted on the Shmups thread about the double pole, double throw, on switch. The diagram is actually like the pinout of the switch, but if you wire it like you're looking at the bottom of the switch, it'll be all screwed up. So now I have up is the improved palette, middle is the normal composite palette, and then down is Play Choice 10. Improved obviously looks the best on Super Mario Brothers. It's the FCEUX palette. I really like it. In some games, though, it may not make as much sense, but on Super Mario Brothers, that just looks amazing. I think I've decided I'm going to break the cost down into 3 or 4 different brackets because there's so many options on what to do with this thing. I think the base price for just installation of the board is going to be like $40 and $45 for the top loader because of the adapter board. And if you're going to do a multi-out on the top loader, that's another $40. If you're going to install a palette switch, I'll probably charge $15-20 for that. Maybe $15 on the top loaders if I use the RF hole. It was fairly easy to get done. On the top loader, though, I'll have to drill a new hole for it, all that kind of stuff. Or on the front loader, I'll have to drill a hole for it. Probably the same cost for the multi-out on the front loader. It's a little easier to get the hole cut out, but there's a lot of extra wire to run and stuff like that, so there's some other considerations on the front loader. So probably the next video will be maybe some quick shots of it installed in a front loader. I'm also a little bit concerned about putting a socket in the front loader since the board will be hanging from the socket. I'm thinking maybe if we had just some really tall header pins to make it permanent. I don't see any problem with it being permanent, especially if it's something that I'm going to work on and I have a Heiko 808 and I can desolder these pins really easily without hurting anything. So there you go, first top loader done.